Hey, I'm Melvin Van Peebles. Look, for those of you who don't know much about it, Akashic is the best independent book publisher in the whole land. We gotta give him a little celebration interest. Here's part of one of my tunes, the Apple Stretcher. Since Akashic is here in New York, so why don't we try it out? The tin cans go clattering down the lane, a drowsy bum thinks it's thunder and pulls the news overhead to stop the rain. No, it ain't Judgment Day, no, it ain't Armageddon. It's just the apples stretching in yawning, just morning, just New York, and a castle putting its feet on the floor. Support Akasha.
Breadfruit Media is a US-based podcast production company that prioritizes the development and production of podcasts by people of Caribbean heritage. Founded by Jamaican-born Carrie-Ann Reed Brown of the Carry On Friends podcast, she created Breadfruit Media to support representation of the Caribbean. Check out Breadfruit Media produced shows including BCLF Always Lit, Bridge to You, Carry On Friends, Millennial Health Podcast, Strictly Facts, a guide to Caribbean history and culture, and Style and Vibes. Listen to any of these shows on your favorite podcast platforms. To learn more about Breadfruit Media, visit their website at www.breadfruitmedia.com.
Hello, it's Shakira. My short story collection In Time of Need is now available as an audiobook, so please get it, and if you enjoy, leave a review or a rating.
You good for nothing, Father want to come for you in an hour. It's my first time on an airplane. I can't believe I'm on an airplane. Leon hit me again. I don't think lunch and meat lips would be appropriate anymore, you being an officer of the law and all. I first met Betty when her son stole my car.
Shakira Bourne's In Time of Need, the audiobook, is now available on Nook, Apple, Scribd, Google, and wherever audiobooks are.
Mr. Mears was dead, and there lay Mr. Mears in his childhood bed, snoring with the saliva running down his chin. When two people get married, what does happen? How it is you don't know what is married, you foolish boy? You just go in the church with all your family and friends, but that not important. The part that matter is later on when you cut the cake. That umpire finish. That's why I don't play cricket no more. Cause I just walk with a Collins and I would give one of them umpires a big lash with it.
Storyshift presents the audiobook for In Time of Need by Shakira Bourne. Get your copy wherever audiobooks are sold.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Calabash of Wonder panel. My name is Doris Allen. I'm a sales support associate at HarperCollins Publishers and an avid Blacklit advocate. The the Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival is a celebration of culture as expressed through the pen of the storyteller and the voice of the poet. They exist to blaze a trail for Caribbean literature through their annual festival, podcasts, vibrant events, and conversations. BCLF's ever-evolving year-long programming is keen on exploring the rich depth of Caribbean culture and its centuries-long tradition of storytelling. They work tirelessly to empower and motivate the hidden storyteller of Caribbean descent to find the courage to tell his or her story and write from the unique lens of that heritage. Caribbean YA literature is the other end of the looking glass. To us, it plays a tremendous role in the shaping of possibilities in the mind, in building self-worth, and in validating representations of realities of a people who have been historically excluded, ignored, and undervalued. In the hands and minds of the fearless Generation Z, Caribbean YA literature is simply revolutionary and evolutionary. The wonderful Caribbean YA writers in this panel, much like their literary counterparts of the same pursuit, have one thing in common. Whether they mean it or not, they are decolonizing the imaginative possibilities and empowering an entire generation of young readers with their stories that somehow always include the myths, customs, and rituals of the societies from which they came. If that isn't revolutionary, we don't know what is. Make sure you subscribe to Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and look for the BCLF podcast. Once you've subscribed to all four, you're eligible to win a book from one of the panelists this afternoon, and the winner will be chosen at random. As you can see, the panel is full of girls, so girl power. And without further ado, this afternoon's panelists are Shakira Bourne. Shakira is a Bajan author and filmmaker. She once shot a movie scene in a cave with bats during an earthquake, but she's too scared to watch horror stories. Shakira enjoys exploring old graveyards, daydreaming, and eating mangoes. She currently resides in Barbados in the Caribbean and spends most of her time staring out to the sea, thinking of new stories to tell. Her debut middle grade novel, contemporary fantasy, Josephine Against the Sea, was published by Scholastic in July. Shakira is also the co-editor of the YA nonfiction anthology, Allies, Real Talk About Showing Up, Screwing Up, and Trying Again, which will be published by DK/Penguin Random House in September. Welcome, Shakira.
Hello, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Next, we have Deborah Falaye. She's a Nigerian-Canadian author. She grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, where she spent her time devouring African literature, pestering her grandmother for folk tales, and tricking her grandfather into watching Passions every night. When she's not writing about fierce Black girls with badass magic, she can be found obsessing over all things reality TV. Deborah currently lives in Toronto with her husband and their partner in crime, Yorkie Major. Blood Scion is her first novel, and it will be published by HarperCollins in March of 2022. Welcome, Deborah.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, to be chatting with all you ladies. It's going to be a fun time.
Happy to be here as well. Asha Bromfield is an actress, singer, and author. Born in Toronto, she's known for her work as Melody Jones, drummer of Josie and the Pussycats in CW's Riverdale. She currently stars as Zadie in Netflix's hit show Lock and Key. Hurricane Summer is her debut novel. It was published on May 4th by St. Martin's Publishing Group. Welcome, Asha.
Hi, it's Asha. Hi.
Sorry, Asha.
Yeah, no problem. I can't get over Deborah and Passions right now. That was my show.
Right?
My show.
Sarah Dash, she was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago. She's a graduate of the University of the West Indies and University College London. She works as an office administrator by day and writes stories about growing up in the Caribbean by night. When she's not writing, she's thinking about writing or taking walks with her dachshund. The only thing she loves more than a lazy day at home is exploring new countries. Her debut novel, Where the Rhythm Takes You, a YA contemporary retelling of Jane Austen's Persuasion, will be published. Isn't it published?
It's out, yeah.
Yeah, it's been published earlier this year. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and excited to talk with all of you.
So we're going to have each author do a reading from their book, possibly two, and we're going to start with Shakira.
Hello. Okay, so Josephine Against the Sea is a MG contemporary fantasy book, and it's about 11-year-old Josephine who finds out that her dad's new girlfriend may not be human. So it has a lot of mystery, adventure, and it is inspired by Caribbean folklore. So I am just going to read from the opening so you can get an idea of Josephine's voice. Yeah, and see her antics. So chapter 1. It's 4:58 p.m. and Daddy still isn't back from his date. I should have never allowed him to leave home. He's been gone for 2 whole hours. 2 hours we could have spent watching the cricket match on TV, but no. He had to go and have ice cream with a friend. We have good cherry vanilla ice cream right here in the freezer. He could have eaten that with me. With my binoculars, I see Jalopy, his old white Jeep, coming from at least 2 minutes away. I yank the binoculars away from my face and glance at the old brass clock. 4:59 p.m. He promised to be back by 5. He's officially going to be late. I peer through the binoculars again and notice a woman with big curly hair in the passenger seat. And he's not alone. I growl under my breath and prepare to defend my territory. Across the street, I notice Akai, my neighbor and best friend, taking out the garbage. His face is almost as sour as mine. I can guess what's in that bag. It's Saturday, which means his mother's made steamed flying fish and cornmeal cuckoo for his entire family. That's when an idea hits me. Operation Slime. I'm going to make sure that friend gets a small taste of life with a fisherman like my daddy. I do my evil laugh. It starts with a low chuckle and climbs into a roaring cackle. Akai looks up at my window, shakes his head, and hurries back inside. He knows what's coming. I scramble to message him from my walkie-talkie under the bed. Come in, Akai. Over. I let go of the button and wait. Just static. The old brass clock ticks. Akai, you better answer me. Over. Silence. Oh, right. I forgot Akai insists on using code names. Come in, Alpha Mike. Over. Static, and then this is Alpha Mike, Alpha Mike, Alpha Mike. I wait for Akai to finish whispering his code name exactly 5 times. That's just how he is. He's on the, what's it called again? It reminds me of something wonderful. Awesome, rhythm, autism, that's it. He's on the autism spectrum, and I'm one of the few people Akai utters a word to. People think he's odd, but I don't mind. He's my best friend in the whole world. Actually, he's my only friend in the whole world, which is fine by me. Alpha Mike, retrieve the stinky garbage and bring it to my location. Over. I waste precious seconds trying to persuade Akai to hide in the hibiscus bushes. I don't know why he bothers to protest. He never turns his back on a mission. Though the bush is about 4 feet high, it completely covers his short, slight frame. He's dressed the part of a good lookout, wearing a dark green shirt and black jeans. So I push a red hibiscus flower into the black knitted tam on his head to make sure he's fully camouflaged. Then I hear a jackhammer rattling in the distance. That's Jalopy coughing its way home. I really didn't need binoculars. I can hear that engine coming from a mile away. I rush inside to get into the position at the top of the stairs. Soon, Akai chimes in on the walkie-talkie. The target has left the rickety vehicle. She's approaching the red hibiscus versilitus bush and ascending the stairs. She will reach your location in approximately 10.3 seconds, 9.6 seconds, 8. I put down the walkie-talkie and pick up my battered cricket ball. Since the incident, I'm not allowed near Coach Bruce's equipment room, so I'm forced to hunt for rejected cricket balls like some kind of cold leather scavenger. I had fished this one out of the bushes when Jared, the best cricket player at my school, hit it for 6. Almost all the thread is gone, and I get a little bounce when it hits the grass. But I don't need bounce now. I need precision. The bucket of slime on top of the fridge has to tip at just the right angle. So I'm going to stop there.
That was amazing. That was so good. I absolutely love Josephine. And I just wanted to know, I mean, you said you read the beginning because of, just to give a feel, but there's so much in the beginning of that I was relating. I also just love Josephine because I'm like a daddy's girl, and I totally was with her for this whole ride. So what is the significance of just starting off like that? And then also the bringing in the friend with autism.
Well, I'm glad that you clarified it was because you're daddy's girl and not that you put a bucket of slime on one of your dad's girlfriends.
Well, it's possible.
Okay, so I just really wanted people to get an idea of Josephine's attitude, because she is a case, she is a hardcore daddy's girl. She has one friend, one member of the family, and she does not want change at all. And when something threatens that change, we see how she reacts to that stimuli. So just a simple date, just seeing her father with another woman caused her to just put a bucket of slime on top of the fridge. And people who buy the book will understand what happens next. And it was just really important for me to establish, one, her personality, two, her friendship with Akai. Akai is her best friend. It was funny when I created him, he's one of those people that kind of appeared on the page. And then, I was like, hold on, what? I need to step back here and get to know you. But you can't just appear on my page like that without permission. But he did. And, he is the perfect yang to Josephine's yin. Like, they're so different. Josephine is noisy. She's a cricketer. She is very overprotective, whereas Akai is more quiet. He's a reader. He doesn't like sports, but they connect because they both have their own challenges in making friends and accepting change. So they connect to each other because of that. And I think just having a friendship there where, there's one person who has your back, even when they don't agree with you, it was just very important for me to show right at the very beginning.
And you did a great job. And that's so important, especially for that age range, to know that, that's a fact, that's really important to have that. So thank you. So next we'll come back to you for another reading, and we're going to go to Deborah. Do you have some of Blood Sign that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, of course. Okay, so first of all, Blood Sign is a YA fantasy that is, inspired by Yoruba and Indian mythology. It's a story that follows a young girl who has she's a descendant of the ancient Orisha gods. And so because of that, she's got this forbidden powers that, other people would kill her for if they found out, the truth about her identity. But her mom went missing 2 years ago. So for her, it's like, I need to figure out what, happened to my mom. I need to learn the truth about my mom's disappearance. And so as a result of that, on her 15th birthday, she gets drafted into the military and basically just takes that opportunity to not only figure out the truth about her mom's disappearance, but also destroy the army from within. And she's willing to do whatever it takes. Like, she's a go-getter and she's very determined. So she's like, I'm not only going to survive, but I'm going to make sure that I take these people down. And even if that means, just becoming the very monster that they want her to be. So the first reading I chose for Blood Sign is chapter 2. It's a scene in chapter 2. And this is right after Sloane's main character's name is Sloane. This is right after she's, returned home from, one of the nightly things that she does in trying to find out the truth about her mother. And so she's having this moment, sharing this moment with her grandfather. And we basically get a deep dive into her introduction into the loss of culture and the loss of identity and just the current state of the world right now. Okay, so I'll start. In Nigeria, to harbor a Scion is to suffer the same fate as one. The Lucis don't only kill us, they make sure to slaughter anyone who dares protect us. How many days has it been since a mother and her 8-year-old boy were peppered with bullet holes in a village square? How many weeks since the last cleansing when 10 Scions were burned to death in the distant city of Ile-Ife? A new wave of heat rises in me with each painful memory, simmering just beneath my skin like it always does when news of another Scion execution spreads through the village. Long ago, Nigeria was home to the 16 kingdoms of the Yoruba people, each land ruled by Scions descended from a different Orisha god. Ile-Ife once thrived in the hands of the descendants of Obatala, the god of mind and body, and the dynasty of Shango reigned over the vast empire of Oyo, the flaming kingdom. Those days, Scions were alive and free, revered even. There were shrines dedicated to children whose Asha had just awakened, sages who taught them how to harness, mold, and nurture the deity's divine power until they became Alashe. But all of that ended 342 years ago when the Lucis arrived from the ruins of the old world and invaded Nigeria, conquering the Yorubas and every last Scion among them. Now, even though I'm sure there are other Yorubas and Scions in the village, you wouldn't know it if you went looking. We have no choice but to hide where our tails talk, growing without an identity, living without a culture, and taking on names that embody nothing of who we are. Mama once told me her real name is Adelina Folashade, but to claim it is to die like the other Yorubas before her. So she dropped a few letters and became Adeline Shade, another villager eking out a living in the slums. When she named me Sloan, she gave me a name without burden, without any ties to my past. And I grew up a girl with little knowledge of her culture. I am Yoruba, but I am not. This is Nigeria, but it is not. My world is only half of what it should be, and I'm only half of what I really am. I cannot afford to be whole. It's a short little snippet, but yeah.
That was actually really beautiful.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to know, did you want to share the significance of reading that particular passage?
Of course. So with Blood Scion, when I started drafting this book, one of the biggest things I wanted to explore was the loss of culture. It's inspired by like my Yoruba heritage and my Yoruba culture. And I spent 12 years in Nigeria before moving to Canada. And while I was in Nigeria, I was constantly surrounded by culture, constantly surrounded by traditions, and being Yoruba was everything back in Nigeria. So the idea of exploring a girl whose world was invaded and as a result, and colonized, and as a result of that, this culture, this beautiful culture that her ancestors once had, it's all gone. That was very powerful for me. And I think because I'm an immigrant, moving to Canada, I struggled a lot in the beginning with having to change my name, like from my Yoruba name to like an English name that was going to be well accepted. And it was this idea of, you have to learn to assimilate, you have to learn to, be a part of this new society. So the idea that my main character, Sloan, does not even have a Yoruba name, and she knows that her mom's name used to be Adelina Folashade, and to basically save themselves and protect themselves, her mom had to change her name to Adeline Shade, which is much easier, less cultural, was of great significance for me because that's something that a lot of people deal with, even in today's society. And so I wanted to explore that impact of colonization, not just on the world itself, but also on identity. She spoke a lot about how in the past, there were shrines that were dedicated to their gods. There were Scions were, alive and free. They were roaming about. But now it's like to be a Scion is basically to sign a death warrant. And, so it's a big theme in Blood Scion, and it's something that Sloan as a character, she struggles with throughout the duration of the book. And so getting to kind of explore that early in chapter 2 was very, very important for me. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that's relatable to a lot of readers as well, all across the diaspora, because we have lost so much of our culture and heritage. And I also have a Nigerian friend. Her name is Bashiratu, but her name that we call her here is Ola. And, I just like, where did you get, Ola from Bashiratu, but so definitely, I think that's super relatable. And I'm really happy that you were able to get that in there, because I think that's really important.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next up we have Asha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yay.
And she's going to read from the Hurricane Summer.
Yeah, right here. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Asha. My debut novel, Hurricane Summer, came out this year on May 4th. I'm really excited about it. It's about a 17-year-old girl named Tilla who goes to Jamaica to visit her estranged father. And it just so happens to be the same summer that one of the worst hurricanes ever are coming to the island. And it really is a story of self-discovery, young love, the father-daughter dynamic, and how that impacts our self-worth as young women, our sexual decisions, and just learning to have autonomy over our own body and our choices. So this scene is when she goes to the river. She's in the countryside with her cousins, and she goes to the river with her cousin Andre, and he convinces her to go up a waterfall. So, sorry, I lost my page. 1 second. Okay. Where are we going? I grimace as I trail behind him. To the top of the waterfall. Get ready for climb. And with that, he zips off further up the rocks. Andre, I yell out as I trudge up the rocks behind him. I turn around to see how far I've come, and I'm surprised to see the brown bodies have turned into little specks below me. There's no turning back now. I continue up the side of the waterfall, tightly gripping the rocks to keep from falling. My heart is in my throat, but I'm careful not to look down. As I approach the top, the surface evens out and becomes a flat landing. I hoist myself up, and to my displeasure, the rocks have now become slippery. Andre grabs my hand, helping me stand up. Walk careful. I don't want you to drop. Andre, I swear to God. My adrenaline starts to pump and a jolt of electricity rushes through my body. I'm so high up. I can't help but smile. I can't help the smile that bursts across my face. Concentrate. Watch your step, he directs. He holds my hand, guiding me across the slippery rocks to a small circular opening filled with water that sits at the top of the falls. He lets go of my hand and takes a step inside the pool of water before taking a seat in between two big rocks. Andre, are you fucking insane? It pours out of me in disbelief. A sense of urgency and excitement rushes through me as I laugh in shock at the danger of what he's doing. He faces forward, turning his back to the thrashing waterfall that blasts him from behind. His entire face lights up as he clings to the rocks for dear life. You feel nice, he screams before reaching his hand out for me to join him. No way in hell, I yell, laughter stumbling out of my mouth. I grab a vine from the tree that hangs low beside me to steady myself. Hell no. Come now, how y'all gonna manage hurricane if you can't manage a little water? I'm not doing it, Andre. Come na, Tilla, he kisses his teeth. I can't, I yell between rumbling laughter. I grin so wide my face hurts. Water from the rapid falls splashes into my eyes and mouth, blinding me every few seconds. I feel woozy, drunk with adrenaline. I'm gonna turn around, I yell out. This was a mistake. Nothing no gossa. God no make mistake, he says. A flare of goosebumps flood the surface of my skin. Do you trust me? He yells. No. Do you trust yourself? Pure euphoria pumps through my veins. I look back at the slippery rocks we climbed up, anxiety speeding through me as I search for an ounce of courage. I take a deep breath, fear and laughter consuming me. I don't know what it is, but something tells me to walk toward him. I release the vine, carefully placing one foot in front of the other as I make my way over to his extended hand. I can barely see my steps and my heart races, knowing that it would only take one wrong move to fall to my death. Focus, Tilla. Giving it my all, I reach his hand and grab onto it for dear life. I steady my breathing before taking a seat beside him, perching my feet onto a rock in front of me to keep me from sliding. The water thrashes against my back, pushing me forward as I squeeze Andre's hand tighter. I look down to find Mia and Kenny hooting and hollering as they cheer us on. The green trees weave around the river like a sacred dance. Birds call to each other from across the water, singing sweet songs of Irie that pierce through the sky. It is a magical jungle wonderland. Tears of joy instantly well behind my eyes, and I silently give thanks for the grace that I am witnessing, the nirvana that runs through me. Well, what do you think? Andre says. It's fucking stunning, Andre. It's pretty, not true? I laugh. Gorgeous. A permanent grin is plastered across his face. Welcome to paradise. He exaggerates a non-existent Z, and I almost burst. This is where I come from. I'm born of these mountains and trees, of this calming sky and water. You ready? He asks. For what? To jump. What? I yell. My heart drops to my stomach. Andre, stop. How you expect to get down? He says. I look at him speechless. Come now, me do it all the time. Andre, I say between my teeth, no way. It's too slippery to go down on the rocks, he says. We have to jump. I almost have an anxiety attack as my tears of adrenaline turn to dread. You'd think I would kill you off when you came all the way from foreign? Come, he takes my hand. Don't think about it. I stare down at the bottom of the waterfall, contemplating what feels like a decision between life and death. Terror consumes me. Tilla, Andre interjects. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. God, no. With that, he grabs my hand and we stand up. My body shakes and I think I might collapse before I get a chance to jump. He smiles wide and we walk to the edge of the fall as the water pushes us forward. Before I have a chance to look down, he squeezes my hand tighter. You can do it. And before I can object, we are flying off the rocks and through the sky. I'm a bird, soaring, free, whole. My heart flies out of my chest, stopping for what feels like an eternity. I scream for my life as gravity takes over and I plunge feet first into the clear water below. Stop there.
Whew, I was holding my breath this whole time you were reading that. And I read it already. That was so good. Oh, wow. So what is the significance of that particular portion that you read? I mean, the patois just came right through. That was so right on point as well. But what was the, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the scene for Tilla was like her making a decision about what her summer is going to be. Because at this point, spoiler, but her dad had left her and her sister in the countryside. And there's a lot going on in the house that she's staying at and a lot of like projection. She's having to deal with a lot of trauma that, you know, the family inherited and is now projecting onto her. And I think in this moment, she really decides like, I'm going to define my summer. I'm going to do the things that scare me. And I'm not going to be sad because my dad's not here, you know? And I think it's really when she decides that, you know, she's going to live the summer for herself. So yeah, really.
Yeah, I think that's super relatable as well. I mean, especially now you all young people always want to do what you want to do anyway. So I'm sure that's super relatable.
Totally.
Did you have any, like, was this a personal experience or did you just pull this out of your hat because it was so...
I've never jumped off a waterfall, not yet. I'd like to. It sounds fun. But no, I mean, I used to spend a lot of summers in Jamaica and I'm a proud Jamaican and I'm happy that you think the patois came across well because my sister and I get clowned a lot by the that we can't speak it, but you know, we can do a little one too.
No, that was good. I have a friend, she's Jamaican. She's older than me even, but I won Ludi the other night and her sister was like, oh, Yankee girl Doris win again. And I'm just like, it just cracks me up, you know, I just love it so much. So that really just spoke to me. So, all right.
Thank you.
I guess, thank you. So we'll go back to Shakira. Oh, wait, Sarah, did you go? Yeah, we're going to Sarah. I'm sorry, Sarah.
No problem.
Where the Rhythm Takes You. My dress is kind of inspired by your book. So.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So before we start, I just want to give you a little background on what the book is about. It is a persuasion retelling. So if anybody knows persuasion, then they know it's a second chance romance that's going to happen. And basically, in the book, 17-year-old Raina, her ex-boyfriend, Aiden, returns after a couple years abroad, during which he's become a famous musician. But now he's back and he's staying at the hotel that Raina's family owns and where she's been working and sort of taking over the responsibilities after her mom died. And so, of course, they spend time together and you can, old feelings come back up. But this scene I'm going to read from is early on in the book. And it is just after Raina has run into Aiden and had an awkward interaction. It's very early on. And so she's seeking some advice from someone who's sort of like a grandmother figure to her. The woman works in the hotel and they have their own sort of community in there. So that's where we're gonna start.
Okay.
When I was younger, I believed the laundry of the Plumeria was a magical place. To get to it, one had to venture through the labyrinth of the maintenance workshop, sneak past the vigilant security sentinels, and descend the dark tunnels that linked one world to another, this new land filled with light and sound and movement. Sunlight spilled through the open ventilation blocks of the walls. Several standing fans coordinated to circulate the hot air and fumes. Giant machines vibrated and rumbled like hungry beasts waiting to be fed. The housekeepers were split into two troops. One sorted and washed, the other dried and folded. Their movements were sharp yet graceful, a well-practiced performance, no superfluous actions or seconds wasted. When I was a child, Mommy had forbidden me from going down there. So, of course, I snuck in every chance I got. Looking back, I understood her logic. It was dangerous for a child alone and unsupervised among the hot machinery and the detergents. Not to mention, it must have been annoying for the housekeepers to keep an eye on the boss's daughter while trying to do their work. This must have been why Miss Pearl, head of housekeeping, intervened during my little adventures. Like clockwork, she'd appear and gently lead me from the main floor to her office, a small room on the upper floor. She'd make me tea, and for an hour or so, we'd sit and sip while she told me stories that combined fairy tales, folklore, and, though I wouldn't realize until later, episodes of the old soap opera Westwood Park. After the disaster at the villa, I needed comfort. I couldn't think of any place better. Well, I haven't seen you in a while. Pearl handed me a cup of tea. For a second, I thought you forgot me. Sorry. I carefully balanced the cup and saucer. It's busy lately. Oh, I guess busier. I inhaled the sweet smoke that curled from the amber-colored liquid. I really needed this. Pearl reached for a pack of jub-jubs from the bowl on her desk. She made the sweets and frequently gave them out as presents during birthdays and holidays. She opened the plastic wrapping and popped one of the sugar-coated candies in her mouth. Is it your father? She asked. I shrugged. Yes or no? Daddy's still being daddy. He's doing the best he can. I know. I just wished his best was better for the hotel. It was frustrating how easily he shook off his responsibilities to the Plumeria, letting them fall to someone else. Lately, he seemed more distracted than ever. He probably started writing again. Even though he'd given up on freelancing to manage the hotel, he still worked on his guide to Tobago from time to time. I took a sip. The taste sharp and bitter. Orange, I guess. And cinnamon? Very good. She nodded. I'm reworking the old recipe. Something simple but bold. They say orange peel is supposed to be good for warding off a cold. She smiled slyly, swirling the steaming cup in her hand. And it eases some stomach aches. Some even say it relieves tabanca. I choked. The hot liquid scalded my tongue and throat. I set the cup and saucer on the desk between us. Pearl coolly regarded me over the rims of her glasses. I slumped in my chair. How did you know? Why would I not? She tapped the side of her head. You think the moment one of them girls mentioned the Chandra boy's name, it wouldn't click? I fiddled with the handle of the teacup. That was a long time ago. 2 years is a long time? She sucked her teeth. It would seem long to you. You young people are the ones who don't realize your youth is fleeting. Blink and it passes. You collect regrets like stones and you don't even realize all the bad choices you've made weigh the same as the good ones you've missed. I got it, I said, interrupting her. If she didn't, she might have gone on for a while. In addition to being a in addition to her masterful tea making, she was a consummate romantic, as evidenced by the fact that she currently was on her fourth husband. Do you? She watched me with narrowed eyes. Do you remember me telling you about my first husband? The mechanic? No, the farmer, she said. I was about your age when I married him. Look now, I already see you setting your face up, but that's how it was back then. And you have to understand, both my parents were immigrants from Guyana. They died, and I was brought up by British nuns at one of the orphanages. He was the first real family I had. Pearl pulled a cup of tea closer, her gaze somewhere over my shoulder. It's been 50 years since he died. 50. God is good. He brought new love into my life. But even though I can't recall his face without looking at a picture, things do stick. I still remember how he made me feel safe, loved. And when I tell you he was a sweet man, the kind of man who'd go 30 miles out of his way every evening just so we could walk home from work together. He used to hold my hand the whole way. Pearl gave me a small smile. We had 2 years together, Raina. 2 years is not a long time.
Aww. That. Does anybody have any tissue?
I'm so heartbroken.
That was so beautiful.
Personally attacked by that one.
Yeah, it seems like that's like an older lady that we all might know, that just really brings it all to full circle for you, when you're just thinking something else and you're completely off, and then they just bring you right back to reality.
Yeah.
So what's the significance of that reading? Like, why did you choose that one? Is that something that really resonates with you? Do you love tea?
Yeah, she's sort of, the character of Pearl is sort of like a lot of different older women I've had in my life who've been, really willing to listen and comfort and, make tea if it'll make me feel better. For Raina in the book, it's especially important because she doesn't have a mom anymore. So this is one of the places she can go for that kind of connection. And, I pull a lot from, my childhood growing up in a hotel and put it into the book. So a lot of that sort of community and stuff that is based on real stuff. And that means a lot to me. And in the book, it means a lot to Raina as well.
Yeah, I think that's really relatable, especially to people who have lost, especially your mom, because that's really, depending on your age when that happens, that's really life-changing. And just you often reach out to just any older woman, that you think you can get guidance from because you're just so lost. So I think that was really powerful as well. So thank you all for that. And I guess we can either go around and do another reading again, or I can ask random questions. So how would you like to do it? Okay, so back to Shakira. Give us more of Josephine of the Sea, please.
As in another reading?
Yes.
Okay. So since everyone is talking about older women and the impact they've had, I think is a good lead off to read from the second chapter, where we see more about Josephine's neighborhood, more people in her life, and the women who inspire her, even though she does not want to admit it. So I'm going to read from chapter 2, when she goes next door, and we get an introduction to Miss Mo, her neighbor. I also see a little bit of the folklore.
Oh, great. So, that's something I have to ask all of you too about the folklore.
Okay. All right. Good choice then. All right. I head over to Akai's house, tossing the cricket ball into the air, then catching it again. On Sunday mornings, most people are either sleeping or washing clothes, and the neighborhood is quiet. But it is never quiet at Akai's house. As soon as I enter the gate, I hear his mother yelling at his many cousins. Though it's just her and Akai, the house is always filled with people. A stranger may think that Miss Mo is mean, but under the yelling, she is super nice, but really superstitious. The door is never locked. Instead, there is a row of banana peels along a piece of wood on the veranda. Miss Mo says no thief would rob a house with banana peels on the outside. because they know it's guarded by a Baku, a tiny leprechaun-type creature trapped in a bottle. Once it's fed a constant supply of milk and bananas, a Baku protects the house owner when released. Most of the time I nod and keep quiet when Miss Mo speaks about her strange beliefs, but Akai always tries to argue with logic. Mother, if a Baku has enough strength to protect us from criminals, why is it not strong enough to break itself out of a glass bottle? Akai would say, his face bent with irritation. The Lord does work in mysterious ways, Miss Mo will reply, and then start screeching at him. It's crescendo, drowning out Akai's arguments. Nothing could change Mrs. Mo's mind, especially when someone did try to break into the house, but slipped on a banana peel and broke a leg. I is a protected woman, Miss Mo shouted after the thief as he limped away with the policeman. The Lord and the Baku watch over me. Morning, Miss Mo, I say, juggling the ball in my hands. She never acknowledges my greeting, but gets annoyed if I don't give it. I won't forget the tongue lashing I got once when I came into her house without speaking. Miss Mo's on the phone, washing dishes and stopping one of Akai's younger cousins from stealing a hot dog from the frying pan, all at the same time. Without thinking, I put the key that has fallen onto the ground back into the keyhole, so evil spirits won't be able to enter the house through the space. It's hard to keep up with all of Miss Mo's weird traditions, but I try. After all, Akai and I have strange habits too, and she doesn't question us most of the time. So I'll stop there.
Oh, that was beautiful. That's nice. Okay, so what mythology did you pull that from?
Well, it's weird to use the word mythology in this context because this is just a way of life for us here. You know, when you think mythology, you're thinking creatures, and there is some of that in the book, but we don't get there yet. This is just talking about the customs and the beliefs that we have, even though they don't make sense. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about Barbadians, I'm talking about in the Caribbean. Like, there are things that we do for good luck, to ward off bad spirits. I remember, I always tell this story, but I remember one day I looked in my aunt's bag and there were black-eyed peas in the bottom of the bag. And she was convinced that that was her way of warding off evil spirits and it was good luck. So, and she's a woman who is very deeply religious. So it's strange. You wouldn't expect that they would have faith in black-eyed peas, but it's just as strong as the faith in the Lord because this is so ingrown. This is the customs. This is what they grew up believing. And you know what? Who are we to say that is not true? That's true. We cannot prove that it's not real. So in this context, I was just talking about way of life, but there is a little section about the Baku, who is a tiny creature in a bottle, and I know that this is present in Jamaica as well. Maybe some other people can tell me where it's found in other places in the Caribbean, but it's just really great to see how the different folklore characters manifest in different ways according to the island or the person that's telling the story. And it's just how our folklore evolved. So a lot of it is rooted in African mythology. And as I did my research, it was amazing the links that I found. Like, I found connections to our mythology in Ghana, in Nigeria, and it's just so amazing to see these characters that I know but with a different name. And I think if we had to know more about our folklore, we will feel a lot closer because we are very similar, and we do have a shared history. So it was great to see that as well. So I want to put all of that in that book. Yeah, for sure.
I think you hit all the notes. Even if you just got a little bit of one, you definitely covered a plethora of them. So thank you again for that. So back to Deborah for more of Blood Scion. I'm hoping it's a part where she incinerates somebody, but we'll see.
So it's actually not, sadly. This is a moment in the book where she's on her way to an assessment after being drafted, and she passes by this sculpture of one of the gods. So in this world, basically, there's like 16 gods that used to rule over the ancient kingdoms. And there's you know what, I'm not going to spoil it. There's basically like a creation myth about how those sculptures and like the monuments, how they came to be. And this was a really powerful moment for my main character, Sloane. So I'm excited to share it. Okay, here we go. She says, down the road, a vandalized sculpture of Obatala pokes at the morning sky. A chain dangles from his left hand. In his right, a bird figurine perches beside a snail shell tarnished with age. The word scum is painted across the white Asha orchid draped around the Orisha's body. I was 8 when I first laid eyes on the ancient monument. That day, Mama and I had just arrived in Ileife with a sack of fresh tubers when a mob of hagglers rushed the street, shoving me into the gap beneath the god's feet. Before then, I'd only heard rumors of the floating statues left standing all over Nigeria and how the Lucis couldn't destroy them like they did our shrines. So as Mama pulled me to my feet, I summoned the courage to ask about the statues. They are a symbol of the Yoruba creation myth, she said hesitantly as she dragged me towards the marketplace. Creation myth? I talked back. Even though she swore keeping our heritage a secret was her way of protecting me, my curiosity was an itch I desperately wanted to scratch. And the older I got, the worse it spread. Mama, I tried again, but as always, she silenced me with a look. Let's go, Sloan. These tubers won't sell themselves. The monument disappeared from view as she wrenched me farther away, but the creation myth remained a mystery on my mind. So as we finished up the day's trade, I caught myself prodding Mama and with more and more questions, until finally she gave in. All right, she sighed. But after today, we'll speak of it no more. Understood? I squirreled as she led us into the shade of a nearby guava tree. Her well-trained eyes darted, making sure there were no prying ears. And then she began. In the beginning, Olodumare looked down from Onrere and saw that the earth was nothing but water and marsh. Her voice was a careful whisper, despite the drowning babble of the squirt. I pressed my body against a tree and held still, determined not to miss a single syllable. He desired a world filled with all the great wonders of his creation, and so he tasked Obatala, one of his greatest emissaries, with a mission. To complete it, Olodumare gave him a golden chain, a white hand, and a snail shell full of sand. My eyes widened as I glanced at the sculpted pieces held in the Orisha's bronze hands. Sure enough, the braided links of the chain bore traces of its golden past, and a layer of red paint coated the once white hand. On that day, Obatala did as he was told and lowered himself on the chain, far enough to glimpse the earth below. He poured sand from the shell across the vast ocean and threw down the hand. As the birds scattered sand across the rolling seas, Obatala marveled in awe as dry land formed and valleys and hills rose, and the 16 kingdoms of Nigeria were born. Lost in the tale, the weariness behind Mama's gaze dissolved, and her voice rose in a sweet crescendo. Her eyes sparkled and danced with high exuberance. I beamed before her, hungry for more of her words, more of my history, more of our beginning, more. Upon seeing what Obatala had achieved, Olodumare molded humans out of dust and clay. To his creation, he gave Emi the breath of life. And on that day, the first Yorubas were born. But Olodumare knew his children needed guidance, and so he sent forth his emissaries to lead. Before they could rule, the Orishas desired full control of the divine power. Thus, Olodumare bequeathed to them a portion of his Ashe, allowing the gods and goddesses to harness his sacred life force on earth. Obatala was first to descend, and where he landed, he called Ileife, the cradle of the Yorubas. Yemoja came upon the Eko Islands, where she reigned as goddess of the high seas. Third was Aganji, who ruled the northern savanna of Shaki as the god of wilderness and land, while Shango, the mighty warrior, laid claim to the kingdom of Oyo as the god of heat and fire. At the mention of our blood deity and his ancestral land, I gasped aloud. I was always told Oyo was where Mama's family had once lived, but until that day, I never knew it held a spiritual connection to Shango and his descendants. Have you ever been to Oyo, Mama? A long, long time ago. Her lids fluttered shut as an old memory swept through her. When she finally opened them, a deep yearning swam in the depths of her eyes. Perhaps one day we'll go to visit. I grinned. already drawing up images of the old kingdom in my mind. Oyo was the land of our ancestors, and soon Mama was going to take me there. She smiled a warm smile as she pinched my cheek between her callous fingers. One by one, she said, carrying on with the tale, the Orishas fell from the skies. As they did, towering statues made of the finest bronze rose above the earth. When the Yorubas witnessed this, they knew Olodumare had sent guardians to protect them. And so for centuries, the Orishas were revered as gods and goddesses of the 16 kingdoms. Soon, they began to marry, and the first scions were born, each with the same magic as their blood deity. They were known throughout the land as Iwan Orisha, Omo Ashemimo. I creased my brows at Mama. What does that mean? It means descendants of the Orishas, children of the sacred power. They were revered in full measure as the gods. And when it came time for the Orishas to return to Omrere, it was the scions who ruled as kings and queens of the ancient kingdoms. When Mama finished her story, a long beat of silence stretched between us. The weight of our history pressed down upon me. Before that day, I barely knew who the gods were or where my magic came from. I barely knew about Olodumare, about the Orishas kingdoms, and how the Luces had robbed me of the life we were truly meant to have. We were rulers, not subjects, kings and queens, descendants of light and magic. We were free. With a sigh, my gaze lingered on Obatala's statue. This wasn't the gods. This wasn't the world the gods left behind. That's it.
Oh, that was actually really beautiful.
Thank you.
And I think it also is makes people wonder. I know I'm a curious person, so I could definitely relate and be like, more. I need to know more. So when you were saying the 16 gods and like, how was that your research process in looking into that? Did you learn something new? Were you intrigued about other things? Like, what was your process like to
Yeah. So mythology for me really started with my childhood. Again, going back to Nigeria started everything. Going back to Nigeria, like again, my grandma told stories about the Orishas, and I've always been fascinated by the fact that as a Yoruba that we had our own gods and goddesses. Like when I was little, I was like, I'm a god, I'm a goddess. Just because I thought it was like one of the most fascinating things ever. And in Nigeria, like especially with like Nollywood media, like you see like movies and shows and everything about the gods and goddesses. Like there were music dedicated to like Yemoja, musicians who claim that they sing the mermaids and all these things. It was all these cool things. So, coming to Canada and having it just be completely westernized and, there's no stories about the gods, there's no Orishas. It was all Zeus and the Norse gods and all that, which is, really cool. I love Greek mythology, absolutely. But I really wanted to do something. I was like, man, these guys have no idea about the African gods, So how cool would it be to, dive into that part of history, something that, isn't popular at all in, Western media, and sort of like bring that to the forefront. And so a lot of my research really went back to my childhood with the things I learned, but I also made sure that I wanted to dive in a little bit to see some of the cultural nuances that I could pull into the story and, just sort of like flip over its head. The creation myth is something that's like absolutely original with it's a Yoruba thing. We all know that about, how the Yoruba kingdom started. The idea to like make it 16, even though there's a plethora of like Orishas, was when I was doing my research, I sort of started to find out that 16 was actually like a very specific number to like Yoruba culture. Like it was significant. Like when the Orunmila, the god of like divination, for example, the descendants who came from him in real life, when they're, practicing like the divination and whatnot, like 16 cowrie shells would always be used. Some people claim that there were actually, in fact, 16 ancient kingdoms of like the Yorubas before we merged and became, one big country called Nigeria. So I thought that was really cool. And I wanted to, bring all of that into the story and, make it my own. The idea of like the bronze and like the statues, like the floating statues, that was just purely aesthetic. I was like, if I one day had to see this in a movie, how cool would it be to see like 16 bronze statues, floating in this universe? And so I thought that was really cool. But really, honestly, with mythology for me, I really just wanted to showcase a part of history, a part of real history that we don't really see in Western media. And yeah, I'm really happy that I was able to do that with Blood Sign.
Well, I'm happy that you did it as well, and really grateful to you because even, I'm older than you all, but even back when like Black Power was a thing back then, there never was any focus on, actual gods in Africa or our history, our heritage there. They never want to exactly take it too far. So I love that you put it in there, and unapologetically spoke to that because I think it's really important, especially now, when now. So, so next we have Asha again. Where are we going now? Where are we going to jump off of?
Yeah, that was awesome, Deborah, by the way. So I'm starting in the middle of the hurricane. So this is the scene where Tilla and all of her boy cousins and I guess the boys who live in the country in that area, they're all sneaking out into the hurricane. And so we're picking up right as they've left. It's like early in the morning, crack of dawn, all the adults are still sleeping. They run outside, they sneak out, and they're running through like banana leaves and zinc on the floor. It's madness. So run to the top of a hill, and I'm going to start there just for the sake of time. The view is heart-stopping. At the bottom of the high hill is a cascading stream of forestry. Rich in vibrant hues and deep greens, the trees perfectly frame the small houses that occupy the countryside of the island. The wind rips through the town below in real time as objects fly around in the storm. Bright pink, blue, and yellow houses stunningly contrast with a sea of greenery as foreign objects dance in circles as if in a sacred ritual. The dance is majestic, and as we look down at it with piercing eyes, it feels like we are watching God destroy his most beautiful work of art. We watch as the rain pummels the land, tearing apart houses and sheds and wiping out what has been so perfectly crafted. Objects crash into each other, and there's an evolution to their madness as they shift and alter, displacing themselves to destroy each other. I watch in awe with a feeling that rings abundantly clear. We are standing in the midst of the destruction of paradise, and it is beautiful. Everything on the island is alive. Everything is interrupted by the raging winds. It is all affected. The hurricane tears through the town as we grip onto each other, and it becomes clear that everything must be changed, even us. When a hurricane finally forms, you feel it in the depths of your bones. It is the feeling that tells you nothing will ever be the same, that nothing can ever be the same. A strange sensation begins to take over. I am excited, but sad. I'm overcome by an eerie feeling of joyous hellos and painful goodbyes, just like that day at the airport when I left home. On a mountain peak in the rural ends of Jamaica, we are standing in our own oxymoron. I can feel everyone's entrancement as we mourn the death of the island, but celebrate its rebirth at the same time. We celebrate the way that the island is coming alive in a way like never before for its own destruction. We watch in reverence as it is being forced to destroy itself, to recreate itself again. And then I hear a wail that nearly brings me to my knees. It is Dane, yelling at the top of his lungs. Ah! Stands with his chest proud as his voice rips through the island, like a king reclaiming his throne. And then Richie follows, and then Andre, and then the rest of the boys, young and old, who stand with us. Ah! They scream, exploding at the top of the hill, yelling to the winds, to the gods, to the land. They yell from the pits of their stomach to the tops of their hearts, from the tips of their fingers to the tops of their chests. And it is contagious. As if by no doing of my own, I open my mouth and finally let it out. I'm electrified as my own voice almost brings me to my own knees, as if the depths of all that I am is finally seeing the light of day. Ah! I scream. It rips out of me. Chilling, full-bodied, whole. Tears pour from my eyes as my voice rumbles in sync with theirs. In this moment, we are one, and this is our tribal song. We are the children of Jamaica, and we are screaming out in agony, in pain, in love, and in joy. We are screaming in tune with our ancestors and anyone who has ever called this land home. And just like that, it all clicks. I'm screaming out to finally hear my own voice. My summer, my time here, my broken heart that shattered like the storm to which I am bearing witness. My heart is being forced, just like this island, to change. And in this moment of melancholy and excitement, I finally understand what Andre meant. There's beauty in destruction. I watch in awe as the island crumbles, tearing itself apart for no other reason than that is what it must do. I watch as the island bows to the request of Mother Nature, to her strong winds and roaring rains. It doesn't object to disaster. It flows with chaos, breaking itself on its own. It welcomes its own destruction with a palpable rhythm, the rhythm of life. I stand hand in hand with the boys of this land, drenched head to toe in the tears of Jamaica as the winds howl out in pain. It calls to us, drowning us in its inevitable sorrow and its inevitable rebirth. I peer over at Andre and Dane, whose eyes well with tears that do not fall. They grin wide with pride, beaming as they look on in amazement at the masterpiece that is taking place. They are open to what comes next. Their disposition of sadness and joy is a paradox that I finally understand. I squeeze Andre's hand a little tighter as he looks at me with tears in his eyes. Welcome to Jamaica, he beams. And for the first time since I've been here, I have truly arrived. As I hold tight the people who have in one summer become sort of like family, the people who call this place home, I can't help but feel that they're the true heart of the island, the beating pulse that keeps it alive. And even as their home is being ripped apart, they are resilient. They are beating strong. The heart of Jamaica has never been broken and can never be broken, because here it stands, hand in hand, ready to pick up the pieces, ready, always ready to find their way back home. And in this moment, as I watch paradise gracefully succumb to its own death, I succumb to my own as well. I've never felt so alive.
Oh my gosh, that again, I'm over here tearing up, like, look at my eyes.
Yeah.
That was so
Like,
beautiful. And you warned me and I still wasn't ready.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, no, thank you. So do you have like have you ever been in a hurricane or?
Yeah, I actually.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
what?
I know. I actually ran through a hurricane. It was like the summer before high school, like graduating elementary school, and I was with my cousins, and same thing. It was early in the morning and we ran through that hurricane. It didn't end
because
well
the way you described it, you had to be there.
Right. Totally. Yeah. It was a really beautiful experience and I'm grateful for it. And I feel like I loved everything that Deborah was just saying about like the gods and like, cause I feel like Oshun helped me write this book. Oshun, the goddess of water, I really called on her. And I feel like these stories, like they're waiting to come through us. I mean, I'm sure all of us here know that already, but these are our stories. And there's so much that we have in our culture, in our heritage, and it's our power. And I'm honored to be here and share these types of stories with all of you guys because, the world needs it. We got the medicine. So yeah, so that's what that scene was for me.
That's for sure. That was really beautiful. Thank you again.
Thank you.
So Sarah, what have you got for us?
Yes. So
where are we going?
We're going 6 years before the current timeline. So we're going back to the point where Raina and Aiden met. Aiden is the ex-boyfriend. This is their first time they're meeting and they're about 11. So we're going to go to what happened is it is the last day of school for Raina and she's just returned home and she's gotten a gift of 2 boxes of toffees. And her mom is basically making her give one away to him, the new boy who was moved in down the road. She's not happy about it, by the way.
Yeah, no, that's giving the wrong idea.
Okay, so she's on her way now. I walked down the street to the house. The music seemed to be coming from the backyard. Actually, hold on, sorry. I think I just lost my place. Okay, yeah, sorry. I started at the wrong spot.
That's okay.
Yeah. So Shellhaven was a smallish village. Everyone knew each other, if not by name, then at least by face. But somehow, Mr. Chandra remained a mystery. In his 70s, he lived alone, kept to himself. A fisherman all his life, He left for the beach before dawn and returned from market well after dark. Sometimes he went unseen for months. The only proof of life were the lights that came on in his house at night. Up until that moment, I had no idea he had family. Young boy, about 11 or 12 now, Miss Clay drew closer to the fence, eager to share. He's staying with Chandra for a few weeks. I think he came to help with the fishing. Did his mother come too? Mommy asked, surprising me. Clearly, she had more information on the situation than I did. I haven't seen her since before Raina was born. It doesn't seem so, Miss Clay said. But then I'm not surprised after the way he kicked her out for getting pregnant. Not that any of us could say we didn't see that coming. That girl was always, But I'm still surprised she let the child visit that man after everything. Mummy's eyes narrowed. Maybe she didn't have a choice but to send him here, especially if she's still on her own. Her words took on a sharp note. Miss Clay didn't seem to notice. I wouldn't be surprised if she was, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Mommy didn't answer. Her gaze focused on the road. A boy about my age had stepped out of the bushes. He clutched a gray cinder block to his chest, then disappeared into the trees next to Mr. Chandra's yard. What is he doing? Mommy asked. Who knows? Miss Clay shrugged. Pat said he was over by her earlier, offered to cut her lawn for $50. What does he need that kind of money for? Mommy, non-committally. The music changed to a Marshall Montano song. I did recognize this one, and without thinking, I started swaying to the rhythm. Miss Clay dropped her voice. But how are you doing, Clay? Everything all good now? I see your hair growing back in. It's lovely. Thank you. Mommy gave her a tight-lipped smile, slicked down her sideburns. But this isn't mine. My chest squeezed and I stopped moving. Oh, Mrs. Clay drew backward. Try cutting your hair on the new moon. It's supposed to make it grow faster. She shifted her grocery bag. I need to pack this away. We'll talk later. Mommy hummed again, eyes still across the road. From the tilt of her head, I could tell she was planning something. I started towards the house, but she called out just as I hit the first step. Raina, go next door and go say hello to Mr. Chandra's grandson. I stopped. Do I have to? It would be a nice thing to do. She crossed the lawn to meet me. That poor boy. I know what it's like having strangers judge you and your family. Growing up, it was just me and my mother. She took the bags from my hands. When she was busy, I had to go stay with any family who would take me. It would have been so much easier if the people I met were nicer. Before I could object, she removed the box of toffees and handed it to me. She removed one box of toffees and handed it to me. Give that to him as a welcome present, she said. I gaped. Half my supply of toffees, half in a blink of an eye. But these are mine. Don't be greedy, Raina. She grasped my shoulders, spun me around, and nudged me toward Mr. Chandra's house. Make sure and come back before dark. I huffed, marching away from her. Before dark, she said, as if like I was going to spend any more than 5 seconds over there. None of it was fair, but it was a nice thing to do, which seemed to trump everything else in Mommy's book. I walked down the street to the house. The music seemed to be coming from the backyard, so I plunged through that brush, skated down the sloping land, and stumbled to a hidden clearing behind the house. The grandson was there, sawing through a plank of wood. He had it balanced on top of a makeshift work table, which he'd fashioned out of an old door and 2 overturned garbage bins. 3 cement blocks were propped next to the back steps of the house. The boy had jet black hair, shaved so short beads of sweat glistened on his scalp. His brow furrowed with concentration. His feet were bare and muddy. He was tall, even back then. His limbs long and knobby. Yet despite the awkward angles that defined his body, he moved with a surprising level of skill. I noticed he acted older than he looked. Later, I'd learned he'd had to, taking care of himself while his mom worked long hours as a nurse. It was only recently his mom and grandfather reconnected, the old man agreeing to take Aiden for the holidays so Aiden wouldn't be home alone all day. The boy looked up, saw me, and startled. Hi, I said loudly. I didn't know if he heard me over the music. My name's Raina. I'm supposed to come over here and meet you and bring you a gift. You're Mr. Chandra's grandson, right? He didn't answer, retreating to the parked truck under the house. All the while, he kept shooting me looks like he couldn't believe I was there. That made both of us. That was a stupid question. I continued, raising my voice. Of course, you're his grandson. Why else would you be in his yard? If you weren't his grandson, this would be creepy. The radio cut off a second before the end of my sentence. We stared at each other in a sudden silence. He shut the truck door and walked over to me, his brows raised with surprise. I gripped the box, half tempted to run off with it, stash it, then sneak it into my room when Mommy wasn't looking. But who was I kidding? She'd know. She knew everything. Did you hear anything I just said? I asked. Just the last part where you called me creepy. That's not... I fumbled for words, embarrassed. You didn't hear the whole thing. I was saying you're not creepy. Still seems like a weird way to say hello to a stranger. No, I swear I didn't mean anything. Something had gone very wrong with this conversation. I broke off when he started laughing. He was messing with me. I'd never met anyone with the ability to piss me off faster. Not before then, and not since.
That was pretty funny and accurate, right?
Yes. So yeah, that is their first meeting. It's for their friends, and then they become friends, and then more, and then less.
So I know you love Trinidadian and Tobagan music. So I just was wondering, is there any specific music that you listen to when you were writing this, or that gives you inspiration, or, you know, get your party started?
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that up, because of course there is the playlist at the back of the book. You can find it. So yeah, if you guys are interested in the book, there's like a little playlist section where I give a little couple of examples of my favorite songs and songs I think kind of go with the book and that appear in the book sometimes. And yeah, so, and it's also on YouTube if anybody is interested. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I always read and listen to like my whatever playlist I have, because it just, I don't know, it feels like it's just easier to like listen to music and read. I can focus like that. So I love when you all have playlists to go along with your books. So thank you.
Yes, and music plays a big part in the story as well, because, you know, Aiden is a musician, and Raina is an artist as well. And I think that because they're both artists, that's how they connect with each other. And since I was using music, of course, soca music had to be a part of it. And yeah, and that was a fun way, I think, to also introduce some more culture into the book. Yeah.
Yeah, and young people love music too. So that's another way to get their attention, you know, for them to realize, oh, she's, you know, she knows what I'm listening to, or she, you know, has her ears to the street. So let's see, you know, what she's talking about. So that's another great selling angle as well. And just the way to relate with your audience. So I guess I'll just ask you all just one general question if we have time for that. And just like if you have any advice or any suggestions for younger readers who read your stories and might feel, you know, like maybe they want to write stories too and amplify Caribbean voices, and just, you know, you all to just give them a piece of advice to, you know, to do that, you know, like you all have unapologetically.
I guess I'll go first. So I guess my advice would be to write the book you want to read. When I was growing up, I read a lot of Sweet Valley High, a lot of Mills and Boone. My librarian was very, very liberal. But I read a lot of books with white characters, and I ended up writing that. That was the first story I wrote. I wrote a story about cheerleaders. It was Sweet Valley High fan fiction, essentially Babysitter's Club. And it's not until I started experimenting with writing and reading Caribbean authors and reading outside of the mainstream that I actually started to write Barbadian and write books. I was so nervous to write dialect at first. I thought that people would think I don't know my grammar, that I don't know how to write. So I had all these doubts and fears because I just was not exposed to the type of writing that I should be, the type of books that I really should have been reading when I was younger, or in addition to that. So I'm just so glad that now young readers have so many more options than I had when I was younger to actually read about your culture, to get inspired to write about your culture. And you know what? Even if you don't want to write about your culture, just don't avoid it because you think it's not something that people want to read. You know, just write what you want and just write the book that you want to read. So that would be my advice.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you, Shakira. What about you, Deborah?
I think if I had to give one advice, it would be don't give up. That became my mantra a lot. Blood Sign took 10 years for me to get to this point. Actually, it's going to be exactly 10 years when the book comes out next year. And in the beginning, I remember working on it and I was getting so frustrated because I was like, I just want this book to come out. I just want to finish. I just like every draft still wasn't good enough. And I didn't understand why. And I kept, thinking maybe I'm not meant to be writing this story. Maybe I'm not meant to be telling it. But someone told me something a long time ago and they said the reason why the book wasn't ready then was because it wasn't fully developed. Like it wasn't fully, like if you were cooking something, like the story wasn't done cooking. And it's weird to say, but it really is the truth because, the more time you go into a story with more knowledge and whatever experience, it's like you're realizing that you're adding more to the story and it's actually becoming the true story of like the authentic story that you're really trying to tell. But I think as, early writers, there's a bit of like an urgency there because you're looking at it and you feel like there's a ticking clock. Like I really got to finish this or I have to get this story out before this age or whatever. But it's like, no, like take your time. And when the story is ready to be done, it will be ready to be done.
Yeah, I definitely agree. A friend of mine, she always says that nothing done before the time. So yeah, I can definitely see that. That's great advice. What about you, Asha? Well, you can give advice on so many different fronts, but
honestly, it's probably the same advice you could use for all fronts. Like, don't listen to people when they tell you can't do something. I think that especially as Black women, I feel like this world always wants to put us in a box. And the truth is that we're bursting with so much creative power. And I just think like what I would say to my younger self or like me when I first started is just like, you can do anything you want to do, and you have to believe in your story. You have to believe in your vision because there's going to be so many people that tell you that it's not good enough. You're going to get so much rejection, but it doesn't mean anything because people are just reading stories from their own perspective. Sorry, my phone's going off. But yeah, people are just reading from their own perspective. And so I think just really learning to fight for yourself and see yourself and know yourself as worthy. Like we can have anything we want. And I always say, as a matter of fact, we're owed. So, have all the dreams and just go for it.
Those are Snapple facts right there. So next up, Sarah, what advice would you have?
I would say, and this is something I had to learn to do, and that is finish the book. Finish the short story. Whatever you're writing, finish it. Like no matter how, you gotta claw your way there, finish it. Don't, if you need to do the thing where you just don't read, edit as you go, fine, do it. Reach to the end. Because for years, I had written so many half-finished stories, half-finished books, half-finished everything. I never got to the end. And it wasn't until I got to the end and I knew that I could end a book that it became easier for me and I was able to do it over and over again. So yeah, I know a lot of people who want to write a book but have never finished it. And I think that is the first step, I think, to getting that done. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice as well. And so I guess just one more, because we were talking about mythology and things like that. Is there anything that with your book or just your research that you did or anything that you would recommend other people like look into, or something that you found extremely fascinating that you think maybe your readers would find interesting and fascinating as well? Like Shakira, I mean, I already was binding.
Yeah, well, it's so funny that everyone was saying that they were inspired by Oshun and Yemoya. So when I was crafting and doing more research on my antagonist, I realized that the Mama Glow, as we would call it here in the Caribbean, she's a manifestation of the Mami Wata in Africa. And this goddess is so complex. This pantheon of spirits is so complex. You know, they have dual personalities. They can turn from a hero to a villain with a flip of a coin. So it really depends on what you want for the story. I just became so fascinated with it, and I would actually recommend people take up other books that have this mythology. So there's the Jumbies by Tracy Baptiste. There's oh my gosh, Jill Rhodes Parker. She wrote one, and it's not coming to mind right now. But she wrote a book that has the Mami Wata in it as well. And then there's an upcoming one called The Comb of Wishes, which is coming out in 2022, Lisa Stringfellow. So it's just so exciting. So you see what I mean by all these different options, because when I first learned of the River Mama, which is another manifestation, which is a mermaid who sits on a rock and combs her hair by the river, and she's known as a mermaid in Guyana. So I only found this out as I was writing this book, you know, but now kids have the option to read so many different versions of this one character. So I would just advise people to just read more about Caribbean mythology. As Deborah was saying, it's just as exciting, maybe even more so than Greek mythology. You know, it's something exciting. It's something that is complicated and complex. So just do some more research on it and read more books that feature folklore.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah,
Deborah?
okay, so yeah, I actually wanted to just jump on a little bit of that bandwagon with what she said too, because I think in publishing specifically, there's this notion and this idea that maybe African or Caribbean mythology or stories that center these things are like a monolith. And that's so far from the truth. Like, there's so many different cultures, even in one country in Africa, let alone like an entire continent. Like, there's so many different cultures, so many, different interpretations of like traditions and practices that we do, that you pick up one African book, it's completely different from like the other African books. So, for example, like, Roseanne Brown's like A Song of Race and Ruin is very much different from like Blood Sign, and it's very much different from Ayana Gray's book that's coming out called Beast of Prey, and it's going to be different from Shannon Smart's book, which is Tipped in Gold. Like, there's just so many different layers to traditions and folklore and mythologies and legends that encompasses like the African Caribbean diaspora. So I would say, and that's like probably the one advice I would give for, anyone watching or just publishing, readers, writers everywhere, just, pick up all these different books and all these different stories, because trust me, like there's layers to them. And even if you continue to start peeling back the layers, you're probably not even going to get to the bottom of it. So
yeah, and that's really important. And I'm glad that you said that. And it also speaks to what we were talking about earlier with our, heritage and history being stolen from us. And so, a lot of us aren't even aware that that's even, that is the case. So then when you expect other people to be aware of that, if we are not even aware, then, so I'm glad that you brought that out. What about you, Asha?
Yeah, I would piggyback on everything they said. I think for me, my book's not about that in per se, but I think just that this idea of reclaiming yourself, especially as a young Black woman, I don't think I realized like really what we have to go through as young Black girls until I wrote this book, because I had to confront so many ugly truths about the ways in which we treat young women, the ways in which we shame young women, the ways in which we like take power from young women, whether it's like their sexuality, persecuting them for their own pleasure, whether it's, no longer being loved and revered by your father because we no longer have the chastity of girlhood. So I think for me, just like reclaiming our stories, going back and healing our trauma, because at the end of the day, like our people were brutalized, and there's so much that trickles down, whether that's through colonization, whether that's through, the mother-daughter relationship, the father-daughter relationship. And so, yeah, I just feel like don't be afraid to reclaim your stories. Don't be afraid to heal and face, our trauma, because I feel like there's so much healing available. And I'm a Scorpio and I'm all about transmuting pain into power. And so I think a lot of the times too, as Black people, we sometimes can think that we don't have stories, and it's like, or our stories are maybe not as or mundane in a sense. Like we don't realize that the mundane parts of our lives are so interesting. And I feel like with white people, we get to see an array of, we see it all. And I feel like we need to start telling more stories about just the day-to-day, you know what I mean? Day-to-day things, because we're interesting, just period. So
yeah, and it doesn't have to be rooted in rape, in slavery or any of that. Just regular stories. Like we're just regular people. We're just a little darker than you. Like literally, that's all it is.
I know.
And what about you, Sarah? You want to close us out?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that like while writing the book, I came to have like a new appreciation for my culture. Like I knew certain things about like Tobago, and because I live here obviously, so I knew the places and stuff, but then I also ended up learning a little bit about the background and like and while I was writing it, I found myself loving the place and appreciating it more. And I think that is something like that I don't know if would have happened as much if I hadn't written the book. For me personally as well, because it touches on grief as well, and that is something I worked through, and all of that just ended up coming out in the book. And so I don't know if there's anything specific that I would say. Maybe there's some like specific Trinidad and Tobago sayings that I found were interesting.
Oh, give us one. We have 3 minutes. Give us one.
I'm trying to think. I remember the one that I used in the book was every moldy bread has a stinky cheese, which just is like there's somebody for everybody, and that one I thought was just hilarious. But there's
that's a good one.
Yeah, there's so many like I can't remember them right now, but like we have some interesting ways of looking at life and phrasing it. So yeah, I think that is something I think maybe during the research kind of popped out at me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, ladies, each and every one of you. I think this was extremely eye-opening and really great. I loved your readings. I thought that each of you read so wonderfully. I'm wondering if you all are doing your own audiobooks, because I think that would be great. And just make sure again that you follow Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and their podcast. And as long as you're following on all the platforms, you have an opportunity to win a book from one of these wonderful women. Girl power again. And again, just thank you all so much for being on the panel. Thank you for working with me and my little snafus. Apologize for mispronouncing your name. I will never forget it again. Okay. And thank you for correcting me on the spot, because that's what we need to be doing.
Oh, it's all love. Right. Of course. Of course. It's all love. Thank you. This has been such a pleasure. I just want to say also thank you guys. You guys are so brilliant. It was so great hearing your stories.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you,
so
everyone.
Much for everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.